So you may not know this about me, but I am a little bit of a gamer. My tastes are, I guess, pretty broad. I like action games. Prior to filming this, I just finished Bayonetta 3. The older Tomb Raider games are some of my favorites. I love fighting games. You know, Nina, Cammy, Melina, they're my girls. I love RPGs too. Kingdom Hearts, Shin Megami Tensei and its various spin-offs, Dragon Age, weird, sort of obscure games that don't fit in any other category, Ape Escape, Rule of Rose, Lollipop Chainsaw. I like visual novels, otome games, and none of this is incredibly relevant. I just wanted to flex my exceptional taste. But also near and dear to my heart are all the quote-unquote girly games. You know, games based on girls' properties that are usually pretty low budget and usually not considered real games. So any Barbie game, the Nancy Drew mystery games, but what I always considered some of the best, the cream of the crop of these, were the Bratz games. I was always incredibly fascinated with these. They're not the prettiest games, but I really think more than any licensed game of its time, these really went above and beyond to deliver exactly what I think a Bratz video game should. You could play as any four of the Bratz. There was a really well-designed open world to explore. You could fully customize their makeup, buy tons of outfit pieces for them, meet and talk with the secondary characters. It's not the most riveting gameplay, no, but it's exactly what I want to experience from a Bratz game. And over the years, I always find myself replaying them. Not just for nostalgia, but because they're genuinely pretty fun. You know, maybe I don't always want to fight giant monsters or shoot guns. Maybe I just want to walk around a mall and look pretty. So yeah, I love these games. I love them a lot, and I always considered them to be a relic of the past, because a game with that gameplay model just really wouldn't have a place in today's market. Licensed games in general, they're just not very welcome. So imagine my surprise when Bratz Flaunt Your Fashion was announced. Since the Bratz brand was revived, people have been asking for them over and over to remaster the old video games. I'm not the only one that has really intense nostalgia for them. I don't think that's even possible now, but they did do the next best thing. They gave us an entirely new video game, but built on relatively the same gameplay. The company tasked with this was Outright Games, who has previously worked with MGA to make a LOL Surprise game, who I don't think was the right choice. They specialize in games for children, very young children. And they are all licensed, so I guess they were the most natural choice. Patoon Studio, the actual developers of the game, don't really seem to have a lot of information available, other than the fact that they work pretty closely with Outright Games. But this, it's not really a kid's game. Or at least in theory, it's not. The Bratz brand isn't for kids anymore. I don't think this game was really heavily advertised to kids either. It's made pretty specifically for adults like me who grew up with the old Bratz games. That much it's kind of obvious to me. So I am going into this treating this like an adult's game, or at least an all ages game. And you're free to disagree with me on that, but the Bratz brand has made it very clear they're an adult's brand now. So I'm just going by what they're saying. But enough background. Let's get into the actual game. I'm going to be going through the game as I experienced it, so I guess I should warn for spoilers. Or if you just want to experience this game totally blind or anything, go do that before you continue watching. Otherwise, let's get into it. So you start the game in the girl's apartment. I thought it was really cute how each girl had her own personalized room. That was a nice touch. But you start the game as Chloe to help you get acquainted with the controls. Side note, Chloe is voiced by her actress from the animated series, Olivia Hack, which was a treat. I think everyone did an okay job as far as voicing goes, but you can really tell Olivia was having the most fun with it.
Uh-oh. What's wrong, Yasmin? Is it the Tweevils? Ghosts? Aliens? Ghost aliens?
However, this was also when I first realized that not all was right in the world. As during the segment where you change Chloe's makeup, I noticed that the options didn't really match what was on her face. And this is true for the entire game. The makeup textures were not implemented properly or something, and so all the makeup in the game, well, it looks awful. It really doesn't matter what color you're putting on. Your Bratz is going to look like she did her makeup after consulting a WikiHow article on how to be goth. I don't know if it was just because I was playing the Switch version, but the game as a whole just was not very pretty. It was often very blurry, and I don't just mean my terrible attempts at taking selfies in this game. Like, geez, I don't know. The new models are nice and the graphics are fine, but at least in the PS2 games, the eyeshadow and lipstick were the right colors. Anyways, after the girls work together to cure Chloe's retrograde amnesia and teach her how to walk and use a cell phone again, you're off to the mall. At this point, you're allowed to choose your character, so of course I went with my girl Jade. And now you get to experience the wonderful world of Stylesville. More locations open up as you play, so for right now, there's the mall, park, airport, and theater, which is inaccessible until you get enough followers. And you can tell they really upgraded the Bratz world to fit into modern times, because the Stylesville Mall is a barren wasteland that has only 3 stores that are open for business. But the bulk of the gameplay is meeting other characters and doing little quests for them. Some are returning Bratz characters like Raya, Fiona, Megan, and Felicia. Either they'll have you find something for them or do a little mini game, pretty much all of which are just the barest bones you could possibly imagine. Clicking in the right spot, staying in the right spot on the meter, etc. But for the most part, you'll be walking around. A lot. Looking for things or trying to talk with the right person. There was this one quest where you had to track down Megan's lost concert ticket by talking to people around the mall, and you can't move the camera. It's fixed at this angle, so navigating is really, really tedious. I must have spent a good 20 minutes trying to track down these people stomping around this depressingly empty mall. Turns out I did talk to the right person, I just didn't have the right quest activated. There's a quest where Felicia asked me to put on the same makeup colors as her.
Wanna do some modeling with me?
But I can only assume she let me complete this quest out of pity because Jade showed up looking like Ebony Darkness Dementia Ravenway. Just like the PS2 games, you'll be finding and buying different outfits and hairstyles for your characters, which is fun. A lot of the clothing is from actual Bratz lines, and I do get the impression that the customization part of the game was put together by people who knew that this part of the experience would be really important to a Bratz game. So there is some cool options. Not as many as I feel there could have been. Like, I definitely remember the older games having way more clothes, but it's still fun to see some iconic Bratz pieces. Unfortunately, it does seem like it was held back, again, by some technical and graphical issues. The textures are just not great. They're just so blurry or pixelated or they clip into themselves. Anyways, the game is split into different cities. Your objective in each one is to earn a certain amount of followers by completing quests until you have enough to do the big quests at the end of the area. I guess the phrase big quest is kind of misleading because it's not really different from what you would have already been doing up to that point. For the big finale in Stylesville, you'll do the worst rhythm game ever programmed onto the Switch, and then you're off to Barcelona to cover a sports competition. Once you touch down there, you'll get the option to pick your character again, but obviously I just went with Jade again. There's this short but cute quest with Ethan and Dylan, who are both there for some reason, but I do think these are the moments where I enjoyed the game most, when you get interactions between the characters, because they're just really nostalgic and do remind me a lot of, like, watching the old animated series. I do think whoever was responsible for, dialogue and character writing, it does show that they cared a lot about making this a good experience for Bratz fans. The writers were clearly very familiar with Bratz, knew the references and the characters, and I appreciate that a lot, because this is something that would have been pretty easy to outsource to someone who just didn't know a single thing about Bratz and could just be very generic with it. Anyways, Barcelona is equally as dismal and empty as Stylesville, but the layout hides it slightly better. It's still an absolute chore to navigate, even with the skates, but at least it's slightly prettier. The old games, the world wasn't incredibly interactive, but at least it looked like it was. It had the illusion of an open world, of a huge mall you could explore. This is literally just a bunch of unlabeled, dilapidated buildings. Why couldn't you just give them fake store names or something? There's so many cool things you could have referenced. A jewelry store called Treasures, a music shop with Rock Angels signage, a formal funk prom dress shop. There are years and years of material for use, but aside from the clothing options and the decorations in the apartments, they don't really use any of it. There's nothing in the environment that makes it Bratz. It could really belong to any game, really. The main areas here in Barcelona are, of course, the mall and the beach. And from there, it's the same cycle of performing quests to get more followers. And it was at this point that I started to notice, little details that bothered me. And I mean, really minor things. Like the fact that the attendant at the shop just says, "Welcome to the fashion store," instead of the shop's name. Sometimes you'll open a chest and the money amount you get from it will be empty. Dialogue occasionally not matching up with the voice lines.
She's got bright red curly hair. You can't miss her.
Side note, while editing this, it just occurred to me that the reason that they cut the word curly out of the text dialogue is because when you meet this girl, you see that she doesn't have curly hair, because they didn't model any kind of curly hair option into the game. So rather than edit or redub that line, they just removed it from the text. An NPC telling you to wear casual clothes for a minigame, but the actual minigame telling you to wear sporty clothes. There are things that, separately, I really wouldn't have given a second thought. But when they're all together, it just really shows a lack of polish. There are some areas, like I mentioned, the character writing, that do show a decent amount of thought and care. But the actual game design, if you couldn't tell already, leaves a lot. And I mean a lot to be desired. I was able to meet the follower goal in Barcelona after only 2 quests. Felicia was here too.
Wanna do some modeling with me?
And wanted me to wear orange makeup, but Jade and I refused because we do have some standards. I still went around and did a few more quests because I wanted to get the most out of the game, but I can't say they were incredibly interesting. A water gun fight that was, for some reason, another terrible rhythm game. A timed course with the skates. Some guy on the beach lost his friend. After all that, I got to go to the sports competition, did my interviews. Felicia forced me to put on green makeup and a sporty outfit if I wanted to continue, and which I can only assume was an act of sick revenge for attempting to ignore her earlier.
Wanna do some modeling with me?
And then she crashed my game. But I get back in, participate in the sports competition, win, obviously, though I think they forgot to put music in this part. Anyways, after that, it's off to Seoul, South Korea to take part in a fashion show. Once you arrive, you're informed that you need 200,000 followers to actually participate, which you would think would be information given before inviting us, but fortunately, I am already well past the threshold before even arriving in this area. The game is extremely generous with its rewards, which I guess is necessary because it's not exactly bursting at the seams with content. The Seoul area is an improvement over the last 2 for sure. I'm not certain why they keep making the areas larger if they're not going to put more places in them other than the standard 3 stores. But it's a pretty area, and it's not as terrible to navigate. Because I already have enough followers, I could potentially just have skipped over this area entirely, but that's no fun. Aside from the mall, there's also the art museum. Because I neglected to get a restraining order, Felicia is here with another makeup quest.
Wanna do some modeling with me?
There's also Megan, whose conversation gave me probably my favorite line of dialogue in the game.
Tonight, I'm doing a live painting performance.
A what? Girl, you just made that up.
I know I haven't been very nice to the game, so I do want to repeat myself and say that the writing is really solid. It's definitely in these moments where it feels most like a Bratz game to me, especially if you're talking to some of the other Bratz characters. Roxy's here in this section too, but they gave her the default short hair video games tend to do when characters need to wear hats. I don't see why they couldn't have given her a unique hair model, but I digress. Some more running back and forth, some more minigames, and it was time to go to the fashion show. I needed to hurry up and get out of here because I knew Felicia could be lurking around any corner. There was a quest line involving searching for a designer who was in disguise, but after walking around for about a minute, I found an NPC very clearly labeled Secret Designer, which is kind of a recurring theme. The game kind of expects its players to have the cognition of a toddler, which would be fine if this were a game for toddlers, but again, it's not. And I don't get the impression that the gameplay is so simple because it wants to be accessible. It just really didn't want to do anything more than the absolute bare minimum as far as gameplay went. There's a catwalk minigame that I did embarrassingly bad on, but because the gameplay literally does not matter at all, I was still told I did amazing and was able to move on to the next area, New York. So after Seoul, I thought maybe this next area, the big finale, would continue this sort of upward trend. At the very least, I was excited for more clothing and hair options. But no, this is easily the worst part of the entire game. There's only one area here, and you can't change your hair or your outfit for this entire section. You do change into the girls' night out dresses partway through, but really, you just run back and forth and do completely meaningless tasks for approximately 4 minutes. There's a moment where the voice actor vocalizes his phone's text alert.
Plink! Oh, a text.
And then, after all that, you play another short rhythm game, and then the game ends. Like, it literally just ends. Credits roll and everything. That's it. So, Bratz, flaunt your fashion. Was it a good game? No. But did I have fun playing it? Also no. The entire game is probably about 4 or 5 hours long, and that's if you do absolutely everything available. So to charge $40 on release, that is criminal. Like, that's actually so bad. Do you know what I could have gotten for $40? I could have almost afforded one pair of Bratz shoes off of eBay. I'm not saying it needs to be this grand, sprawling 100-hour adventure. I know the old Bratz games were pretty short too, but they had way more stuff to collect and customization was a lot more in-depth. So it was a lot easier to just spend more time with them. I guess it's technically a complete game. Like, it functions. There's sort of a beginning, a middle, and an end. But it's so empty and devoid of any actual content or gameplay that I cannot recommend you pay any amount of money for it. Just play the old PS2 games. There's nothing that this game does better than games released almost a decade ago. I think the Bratz deserved better, because again, it was really fun to see the characters again, and them interacting, and the little itty-bitty bits of story and character content were not bad at all. Like, there were at least a couple of people who worked on this that cared about it, but not enough, because literally everything else is just so phoned in, and it's disappointing. A modern-day Bratz game can be a lot of things, but it should never, ever be boring. It's obvious that they're just appealing to nostalgia. You look at reviews of the game, and there's a lot admitting that it's a bad game, that it's overpriced, and it's not very fun, but it heals their inner child. And I don't know, I just think our inner children need to get better standards. If this were a kid's game, I would be going a lot easier on it. I still wouldn't say it's a good game, necessarily, but I wouldn't be complaining quite as much. And I'm not saying that to be a game for adults, or a game for all ages, you need extremely complex gameplay. Like, the cozy genre is huge right now. But there needs to be some level of engagement, some level of effort that this game just did not have. Simple, casual games can still be fun. They could have had a bigger variety of minigames, more customization options, more returning Bratz characters with more personalized quests and storylines. There's literally a million things they could have done that they just didn't. Either because they didn't have time, or because they just didn't care. I don't enjoy disliking this game. Like I said, I'm a big consumer of media that is, traditionally girly, that people tend to write off as vapid and boring simply because it's pretty feminine. So for this game to really feed into every single negative stereotype that people tend to have about these girly games, yeah, that's pretty disappointing. Overall, I would give it like a 3 out of 10, because it is a game that you can play. It's at least 90% finished, and there were small bits of it that I liked, and I feel like the potential is absolutely there. With more time in the oven and more effort in the gameplay, this could have been pretty fun. But I have to grade what I see in front of me, not what it could have been, and frankly, there's just not much here to grade. So yeah, if you have any amount of nostalgia for the Bratz video games, play those. Just play those instead. There's really no reason to play this one. But tell me what you think. Maybe you did enjoy it. I'm really curious to hear what your thoughts are. I pray that you did not spend full price on it, but regardless, just let me know. And when you are done with that, just be sure to like and subscribe for any future Fashion Doll content. Thank you.